Pastures of Fiery Passion and Madness is a true story of a deadly love triangle that happened in a small Wisconsin town in the early 1900s. Hi, I'm Troy Locke. I wrote the screenplay Pastures of Fiery Passion and Madness. It's a story about Grace Lusk, a school teacher who was sent by the Moseley Commission in 1910 to Europe to study educational methods there. In 1912, Grace came to Waukesha, Wisconsin. The following year, she met Dr. David Roberts at a dinner party given in her honor. Now, Dr. Roberts is a local veterinarian who amassed a fortune by selling animal medications worldwide. He also wrote the book, The Practical Home Veterinarian, which sold over 1 million copies. He was so well known that the Rockefellers had him tend to their cattle in New Jersey when they became ill. Now, Roberts subsequently asked Grace to help him with a second book, Cattle, Breeds, and Origin. And they began working on that book in 1914. But during that time, they began an affair in which they had secret rendezvous at Chicago hotels during a 2.5-year period. During the affair, which lasted from 1914 to 1917, Dr. Roberts would regularly tell Grace that he was going to leave his wife, divorce her, and make an honest woman out of Grace by marrying her, which of course he never did. And it was here in this park, Cutler Park, where they held their last embrace and their last kiss. It all came crashing to an end, however, when in 1917, when Dr. Roberts' wife, Mary Roberts, confronted Grace about the affair. Mrs. Roberts apparently called Grace a lot of nasty names, including the B word, in which Grace pulled out her pistol and shot Mary Roberts dead. She then went back upstairs, put on her wedding gown, and took her pistol and shot herself. After Grace shot herself, Dr. Davies came along, and then the police chief, but they stayed at the bottom of the stairwell while in Grace's home, while Grace was at the top of the stairwell, holding her gun still. She kept the two men at bay at the bottom of the stairs for about 45 minutes to an hour. She asked the police chief, Chief, am I going to go to jail? And the chief says, yeah, you're going to go to jail, Grace. Well, that disturbs her enough that she asked the two men to step out of sight. She then goes back into her bedroom, shoots herself a second time, this time not killing herself again, putting a hole in her lung and blowing off one of her fingers. It took her 11 months to recover, and for local officials to organize a trial at the Waukesha County Courthouse behind me. Well, today it's the Waukesha County Historical Museum. At the time, numerous countries were involved in World War I. Now, when the news got out that a school teacher had shot the wife of the man whom she was having a love affair with, it caused a media frenzy and pandemonium around the courthouse during the trial. The story immediately after the shooting and during the trial was carried by virtually every newspaper across the country. The actual testimony took place over 12 days in which she and Dr. Roberts each gave their individual accounts of the sordid details of their affair. Grace's attorneys tried to prove that she was insane. In the end, however, the all-male jury convicted her of second-degree homicide. When the jury foreman read the verdict, Grace snapped, jumped up from her seat at the defense table, screamed at the prosecutor, D.B. Toller, scratched his face and tried to choke him. It took several deputies to pry Grace off of him and get her back to the jail. 3 weeks after the trial concluded, Judge Martin Lewick sentenced Grace to 19 years in prison. The anniversary of the murder of Mary Roberts, Grace was to spend in solitary confinement. Well, she went into the Waupun State Penitentiary just 2 days shy of the first anniversary of the murder. Dr. Roberts was later convicted of violating adultery laws, and he was sentenced to a year in the Milwaukee House of Corrections. At the age of 83, he married his fourth wife, who in 1948, she was 33 years old and his mistress while he was still married to his third wife. Now Grace was pardoned by Governor John Blaine after spending 4.5 years in prison. In 1925, she wrote a couple articles for the Atlantic Monthly about the brutal conditions she endured while she was in prison. She also married a Mr. Brown, who nobody actually saw, so there's a lot of question out there as to whether Mr. Brown actually ever existed. In 1930, Grace Lusk died from complications of goiter surgery, and she was buried in an unmarked grave in Stoughton, Wisconsin, where she was born. She died at the age of 52.
See more about the Grace Lusk story on TroyLock.com, and of course, give it a like on Facebook.